Thank you for taking the time to view my problem of practice presentation. My name is Koss, and under the guidance of Dr. Karina Call, I completed a quantitative research study entitled Gender Disparities in Salary, Experience, and Enrollment, a quantitative causal comparative analysis of Missouri K-12 public school administrators. During this presentation, I will cover the following 10 agenda items: the problem statement, a brief overview of the literature review, the purpose statement, research questions, the theoretical framework, methodology, an overview of the findings, implications and recommendations, my distribution plan, and finally the study's primary references. The problem statement of this quantitative causal comparative study is: despite progress towards achieving gender equality, considerable gaps persist between female and male public school administrators. Although women constitute the majority of classroom teachers, they remain significantly underrepresented in educational leadership roles. This underrepresentation highlights the ongoing existence of a glass ceiling in educational administration, where barriers to advancement disproportionately affect women. I organized my literature review in 3 main sections. First, the review highlights the manifestation of American gender bias leading to the formation of glass ceilings and cliffs across various industries in the United States. Second, the review establishes the prevalence and effects of gender bias within the American education sector. Third, the review provides an overview of the theoretical framework scholars have recently used to analyze gender bias against women in educational administration. The purpose of this quantitative causal comparative study is to analyze the representation of female Missouri public school K-12 assistant principals, building level principals, assistant superintendents, and superintendents, and to identify potential gender disparities in terms of salary, experience, and school enrollment. My problem of practice includes 3 research questions. The first question: is there a statistically significant difference between female and male Missouri public school administrator salary? The second question: is there a statistically significant difference between female and male Missouri public school administrators' total years of experience? And the third question: is there a statistically significant difference between female and male Missouri public school administrators' school enrollment size? The theoretical framework guiding this study is Joan Aker's gendered organizations theory, which proposes that organizations inherently create and fuel gender inequalities. Aker's theory argues that gender is not just an individual characteristic, but a fundamental organizing principle that shapes an organization's structure, culture, and practices. According to Aker, gender influences everything from the division of labor to organizational culture and decision-making processes. The figure included on the slide is an original I created to show the 4 gendered substructures identified by Aker that contribute to the construction and maintenance of gendered organizations, including organizing processes, organizational culture, on-the-job interactions, and gendered identities. Each of these 4 substructures are often implicit and intertwined, leading to a continuous process with multiple interconnected aspects. Aker also includes the concepts of gendered subtext, highlighting the underlying and often implicit norms, practices, and assumptions within organizations that are often made explicit through policies and procedures. Additionally, Aker argues that intersectionality further exacerbates gendered processes, resulting in disadvantages for women belonging to minority communities within organizations. The methodology I selected is a quantitative causal comparative design in which I employed descriptive statistics and Mann-Whitney U-tests to examine potential gender disparities among Missouri K-12 public school administrators. The Missouri Department of Elementary and Secondary Education provided the initial data set through the Missouri Comprehensive Data System in a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet, which included 6,335 records of Missouri public school administrators from 2024. For my study, I excluded all individuals who did not meet the criteria of assistant principal, principal, assistant superintendent, or superintendent. After making all necessary exclusions, the total sample comprised of 1,714 assistant principals, 2,215 principals, 338 assistant superintendents, and 529 superintendents, totaling 4,796 Missouri K-12 public school administrators. Of the 4,796 K-12 public school administrators, 53% were female and 47% were male, indicating a nearly balanced gender representation. However, female administrators were overrepresented at the elementary level, comprising 74%, while they were underrepresented at the high school level and in district offices, where they comprised only 36% in each case. Overall, in terms of gender distribution, the representation of female administrators decreases as decision-making power increases, with women accounting for 55% of assistant principals, 58% of building-level principals, 43% of assistant superintendents, and only 31% of superintendents. The data also revealed disparities in representation across intersecting racial and gendered identities of Missouri K-12 public school administrators. In 2024, there were 2,514 female administrators in the state, comprising of 53% of all administrators. However, there is a noticeable racial disparity within this group, with white women representing the vast majority, accounting for 83% of all female administrators. Although Black women were the largest group of women of color in these roles, they comprised only 14% of the total. Other racial and ethnic groups were represented in much smaller numbers, with Hispanic women comprising of 1%, while Asian, Native American, Pacific Islander, multiracial, and other or unknown categories each constituted less than 1% individually. Overall, non-white women comprised only 17% of female administrator positions, indicating significant underrepresentation. In addressing research question 1, I conducted a series of Mann-Whitney U-tests to determine whether statistically significant differences in salary exist between female and male Missouri public school assistant principals, assistant superintendents, and superintendents. The results of the Mann-Whitney U-test revealed that female assistant principals earned $4,319 more than their male counterparts. This difference in salary was statistically significant, although the effect size was weak. Conversely, female principals earned $2,747 less than their male counterparts. However, this difference was not statistically significant, and the effect size was very weak. Female assistant superintendents earned $4,846 less than their male counterparts, although this difference was again not statistically significant, and the effect size was very weak. Finally, the largest salary gap was among superintendents, with female superintendents earning $10,659 less than their male counterparts. This difference was statistically significant, although the effect size was weak. Based on these findings, I rejected the null hypothesis for assistant principals and superintendents, but retained it for principals and assistant superintendents, suggesting that statistically significant gender-based salary disparities exist in some administrative roles, but not across all positions. In addressing research question 2, I conducted a series of Mann-Whitney U-tests to determine whether statistically significant differences in years of experience exist between female and male Missouri public school assistant principals, building-level principals, assistant superintendents, and superintendents. According to the results, there was no difference or relationship between female and male assistant principals' mean years of experience. Conversely, the Mann-Whitney U-test found that the years of experience for female and male principals was statistically significant. However, the effect size was negative and weak. Additionally, the Mann-Whitney U-test found that the years of experience for female and male assistant superintendents' years of experience was not statistically significant, and the effect size was negative and very weak. Finally, the Mann-Whitney U-test found that the difference in years of experience for female and male superintendents was also not statistically significant, and the effect size was again very weak. Based on these findings, I rejected the null hypothesis for principals, finding that female principals have more years of experience. However, I failed to reject the null hypothesis for assistant principals, assistant superintendents, and superintendents. These findings suggest that statistically significant gender disparities in years of experience exist in certain administrative roles, but again, not across all positions. Finally, in addressing research question 3, I conducted 2 Mann-Whitney U-tests to determine whether statistically significant differences in student enrollment exist between female and male Missouri public school assistant principals and principals. This research question excluded assistant superintendents and superintendents due to the number of participants who did not report enrollment. The Mann-Whitney U-test found that the difference in student enrollment for female and male assistant principals was statistically significant, with females leading schools with fewer enrolled students, although the effect size was weak. The Mann-Whitney U-test found similar results for principals, with female principals leading schools with fewer enrolled students, although again, this effect size was very weak. Based on these findings, I rejected the null hypothesis for both assistant principals and principals. These findings suggest that statistically significant gender-based disparities exist in student enrollment, with female assistant principals and principals working in smaller schools as compared to their male counterparts. This study's descriptive analysis revealed a pronounced pattern of sex segregation in educational leadership positions across Missouri. Female assistant principals and principals were found to be significantly overrepresented at the elementary level, where they comprised 74% of the workforce, while at the middle school level, female administrators comprised 49%. In contrast, their presence sharply declined at the high school level, where they accounted for only 36% of administrators, and at the district office level, where they also accounted for 36% of administrators. These findings closely align with those of Grissom, who similarly observed that in Missouri, women make up 68% of principals at the elementary level, but only 40% at the middle school level and 20% at the high school level. The administrator salary analysis revealed evidence of gender-based pay disparities, with female principals earning an average of $2,747 less annually than their male counterparts. The results of this analysis are consistent with prior research conducted by Grissom, who investigated gender disparities in school leadership compensation. Grissom found that across the United States, female principals earned an average of $1,000 less per year than their male counterparts. The same researchers found that this gender-based pay gap was even more pronounced in Missouri, with female principals earning approximately $1,450 less per year. The analysis also revealed that the difference in years of experience between female and male principals was statistically significant, with female principals having on average 1 more year of experience. These findings align with those of Grissom, who also reported that Missouri female principals have on average 1 more year of experience as compared to their male counterparts. However, this 2024 analysis of Missouri administrators revealed no statistically significant difference between female and male assistant superintendents or superintendents' years of experience, which does not reflect recent national trends reported by the school's Superintendent Association, revealing that male superintendents had more experience on average than their female counterparts during the 2022-2023 school year. The contrast with national trends indicates that local factors in Missouri may be influencing gender patterns and administrative experience differently than those seen at the national level. The 2024 Missouri data demonstrated that male assistant principals and principals were assigned to schools with larger mean student populations. This finding is in alignment with the recent 2023 National Teacher and Principal Survey data analyzed by the National Center for Education Statistics, which indicated a trend of female principals working in smaller schools with smaller student enrollment compared to their male counterparts. According to the National Center for Educational Statistics, 62% of male principals work in schools with student enrollments of 1,000 or more, while only 38% of female principals are represented in these schools. The key decision makers of this research study include superintendents and women working in education who seek career advancement. As gatekeepers of policy and culture, superintendents are uniquely positioned to address these inequalities that are present in the system. Superintendents must ensure their school districts have transparent compensation policies and fair promotion practices. They must also address personal bias and commit to intentional, data-driven reforms. As the primary leaders of their districts, superintendents have both the authority and the responsibility to create equitable outcomes. At the same time, women seeking advancement in educational leadership must navigate a system shaped by gendered norms and barriers. Women seeking administration roles should actively seek out and participate in targeted mentorship programs and leadership development opportunities specifically designed to support female leaders. Women in education must also advocate for equitable hiring and promotion practices within their school districts and professional communities. Additionally, future researchers examining gender disparities in educational leadership should consider employing a mixed methods design that combines both quantitative and qualitative approaches. This will provide a more comprehensive understanding of the challenges faced by women in this field. Conducting longitudinal studies to track career trajectories over time could also yield valuable insights into Missouri's public school administrative workforce. To ensure the effective dissemination of my research findings, I intend to present my findings at various regional and national educational conferences, facilitating direct dialogue with superintendents. These conferences include the Missouri Association of School Administrators and the Missouri School Board Association. I will propose interactive sessions that combine an overview of current demographic trends and patterns in Missouri's K-12 public school administration with opportunities for reflection and discussion among participants. To effectively share my research findings with aspiring female educational leaders, I plan to submit a peer-reviewed manuscript summarizing the results of my study to 2 scholarly journals, including Educational Administration Quarterly and Advancing Women in Leadership Journal. I selected these journals because they are closely aligned with my focus on educational leadership and gender equality. I will conclude this presentation with my study's primary resources, and I would like to thank you again for taking the time to listen to my problem of practice presentation. Thank you.